Good evening. Welcome to Suffering in Silence with Tia May on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay family, we're rising out of the ashes together. Our topic on this evening is helping others when you are safe and healed. We are with our co-host, Pastor May Davis of Greater Works Christian Ministries, Jennifer Peterkin, and Carrie Hardy. On this evening, Luv Bay, I want to start with a very sorrowful announcement. I have words sent to me from Mary Weasel Bear that I want to share. On February 8th, 2022, unfortunately, Miss Tia Long Soldier's body was found in Grass Creek, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Tia leaves behind 3 beautiful children, a boy aged 12 and 2 girls, 9 and 5, who will be in the care of their great-grandmother, Victoria Good Voice Elk. The family would first of all like to send a heartfelt Wapala thank you to those who respectfully helped to bring Tia home. It has been a very trying time, and words just can't describe the pain that is felt right now. The gratitude and love shown to Tia's memory will not be forgotten. As the days go by, we remember Tia for who she is, a mother, sister, daughter, granddaughter, friend, and a warrior woman who fought hard to provide for her children. She was a caring woman who loved hard. She had a great sense of humor and was an artist in a beautiful beadwork she created. Tia lives on through her children and every person fighting for her voice to be heard and justice to be served. Again, Wapala Tanka to those who gave and continue to give selflessly to our family during this trying time. Thank you, Miss Victoria Good Voice Elk, grandmother. If anyone would like to make a donation to help cover costs directly to Grandma Victoria, you can do so by sending an email to Mary Weasel Bear via PayPal. Mary's email address is maryweaselbear@gmail.com. That's MaryWeaselbear@gmail.com. And again, our hearts go out to the family of Cheryl Tia Long Soldier. I don't know what more to say. I mean, we are sorry. We have made a donation on behalf of Suffering in Silence to the family. We will do so again in the future. But again, if you would like to be a financial assistance to Miss Victoria and to Tia's children, again, you can make a donation through PayPal to maryweaselbear@gmail.com. So, listeners, if you have any questions or comments for our guest or co-host on this evening, you can email sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. If you have resources that you would like to share with us on a national or local level from your country, your community, your local organizations, or your faith community, you can also email sufferinginsilencedv@gmail.com. Jen, you want to start us off with greeting the listeners on this evening?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me again, Tia. So happy to be here with all of our co-hosts and able to talk about this topic. I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. My background, if anybody is new here, I am a domestic violence advocate. I became a domestic violence advocate after going through my own domestic violence situation. I was in an abusive marriage, and going through an advocacy program really helped me heal in a lot of ways. It's not for everybody, but it definitely helped me. At this time, I am trying to get my own project off the ground called The Human Experience. It is a blog and podcast. that is storytelling, how our experiences shape who we are as people and allow us to open our hearts and minds to empathy and compassion. So the blog will be launching very soon, but for now you can follow me on Instagram at GetTheHX.
Thank you. Carrie, you want to say hello tonight?
Hi, my name is Carrie Iman Hardy, and I'm a writer. I write mostly on women's identity and experience when it comes to issues that are specifically pertinent to women's experience. And I would say that's why domestic violence specifically comes over that purview, not to say that men don't endure it, but just with the societal implications that women often endure because of domestic violence. I've written on that by helping Tia with her book and the dynamic with the church and how even some of the people she thought was close to her responded. And I'm currently working on another project that has to do with that as well. It's also an autobiography. So I help edit books. I help people get their pieces together. Because sometimes you don't know where to start when you write a book, especially if it's based off of marriage. Especially if that marriage seems like a blur. You don't really know where to start. So I kind of help with that. So yeah, I help people write their books, and I specialize in women's identity and trauma narratives.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We want to start with sharing some resources. So tonight we have in Yukon, you can reach out to the Women's Transition Home Crisis Line. Their number is 1-867-668-5733. You can also reach out in the Northwest Territories to NWT Community Counseling Program. Their number is 1-800-661-0844. And then in Nunavut, you can reach out to Nunavut Kamatsiatu Helpline. The number is 867-979-3333 for Iqaluit. The number outside of Iqaluit and for residents of Nunavut is 1-800-265-3333. So again, our topic on tonight is helping others when you are safe and healed. And so as a victim or survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, or really any traumatic experience, there's definitely power in sharing your story. And sharing your story can help you through your own healing process. So speaking out to many or even just one or two individuals can aid you in moving forward. So on tonight, we just wanted to emphasize that you have to be in a healed and a safe place on your journey in order to be able to do that. And also we wanted to emphasize that you really don't have to. Your healing process may very well entail you getting what you need and then never speaking of your story to anyone. And nothing is wrong with that. Unfortunately, I've seen victims and survivors of trauma either place undue stress and worry on themselves, thinking that they have to open up to the public and they have to tell the world what's happened to them. Or I've seen others try to push victims and survivors forward, to advocate, and they simply aren't ready, or they really just aren't called to do it. I've shared several times before that I do what I do because I'm called to do this. This is my purpose. God has led me to share my story and to do all that I can do to encourage and inspire and educate, victims and survivors, the public and clergy, all who would listen and learn. But I couldn't move forward until I was ready. I couldn't move forward until my heart was well enough for me to do so. And I'm not saying that I'm 100%, completely healed. I don't even know if that's a real thing. I don't know if you'll ever be able to say, I'm totally fine. Everything is good. But I am safe. I do have a support system. I'm healed enough to help others. And it's not something that I convince myself to do. I'm not forcing myself to do it. And I also didn't allow anyone else to push me into it. Advocating for any kind of trauma is necessary. I do believe someone has to do it. Someone has to stand up, but it's not easy. And the someone that does it, it really does not have to be you if it's not your place. So trying to step into trauma and help while you're still dealing with your own trauma, it really can do more damage to yourself and to the ones that you are trying to help. So, Jen, as we were talking on the other night about understanding your own trauma and re-traumatization, what are your thoughts on the subject? Because it really is important to advocate, but everyone is not in that position to do the advocating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's important to note that as a as a society, we hear the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and we most often, at least here in America, associate it with military combat veterans. And while PTSD certainly does exist for combat veterans, it does not just affect them. PTSD can be any sort of traumatic stress. And so victims of domestic violence, interpersonal violence, and sexual assault often experience PTSD. So it's really, PTSD is a complete rewiring of your brain. And I think it's important that we note and understand how important it is to seek counseling and healing and help for yourself when you go through this, because a lot of times it can feel like, I'm messed up, but it's just me. Nothing really has happened. I'm safe. I'm out of the danger zone. So all I have to do is just keep pushing forward. And there's no nobility in that. Seeking help is good. Mm-hmm. It's always a good thing for yourself. And so specifically seeking help to get a diagnosis for PTSD or to learn more about it, to see if it's something that you may be experiencing, I think it's a really important part of the healing journey for specifically domestic violence victims. Mm-hmm. I think a good resource for learning about PTSD or traumatic stress in general is the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's a good book just to kind of have an introduction to traumatic stress and what it actually does to your body, because there are very physical and emotional reactions to traumatic stress. Mm-hmm. And re-traumatization is a huge part of that. When you start kind of trying to relive your experience for whatever reason, re-traumatization is a very real and visceral experience, a very physical experience. So it's definitely something that, we need to be careful with, and we need to be aware of when we are telling victims and survivors that they're now safe and they can move to the next part, which is telling their story.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a balance in it, that we have to have. And I've said before, I do believe dealing with the issue of domestic violence, it is going to take, some victims and survivors to speak up and to tell their stories. And I believe that it's going to take men to stand up and to speak out against this. I believe men will play a huge part in this. But having said that about victims and survivors speaking up, there is still a balance. So, I'm not saying, and I would never say to anyone that something traumatic has happened to you. Now you just pick up the mantle and you just run out your front door and you're just, waving a flag and advocating for everyone. It doesn't work like that. You do have to come to a place of healing, and you have to be safe. And you also have to know that this is what you're called to do. I've said again, I am called to do this, but it's not easy. So again, I have my support system that, I lean into, and that's there for me. And if it was not for, I'm telling you, the grace of God and the Lord speaking to me himself, I would not be doing this. my plan was to move through, to be healed and be okay, and go live my life. But I've gone through what I've gone through, and God put me in a place for me to be able to reach back and help someone else. And I'm okay with doing that. I'm not being pushed out in front. It's not easy. I do feel scared sometimes. I do have to, speak to my friends, my family, my support system, my counselors. I do have to do that. I have to take care of myself. But again, this is not for everyone to do. And I just don't want to have someone walk around with that on their conscience. Like now you have to carry, that weight on your shoulders, because it's not an easy thing. I don't know that I would be able to do what I do, like without the support of, people like you, Jen and Carrie, who I can tell my story to and get what I need from. But the most important thing is to, care for yourself. Even when you want to help someone else, you have to take care of you. You got to take care of yourself. So Carrie, what do you think? What are your thoughts on?
Yes, sorry for the awkward pause, you guys. I thought she was continuing her question.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that you should come to a place of healing. For me, I think that's hard to think about, because when I see someone in my situation, I always feel like that was me, and I always feel like I have to help, because I know what it feels like for nobody to care. Like, nobody cares. And like that realization is very isolating. It's very cold, and it's very threatening to your humanity. So what I try to do is have boundaries.
Yes.
Because I like to help, especially if I feel like I was in a situation. But I'm trying to make sure that I have boundaries. Be like, okay, I know if I do this, that might be triggering for me. I know that if we continue to dwell on this subject, that might be re-traumatizing for me. And for me, specific types of trauma, for some reason, your brain can want to relive. Or not want, but like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like you have like a compulsion. It sounds like you're almost like, it's a compulsion to go back through.
Yeah, it just
what
happens.
You went through.
It just happens.
Yeah, and not even to like change it. Like maybe if I can go back, it's like just going back through it. So I know that I have to be careful, because certain triggers can start that in your brain. Cause and so you have to really, really be careful, I think. So if you're someone who's very empathetic, and you're someone who is bothered by someone being in your same situation, and it really feels bad to you, it gives you a bad feeling not to help. I can only talk from my perspective. You're one of those people. I would say have your boundaries and know, like, do some meditation. I would say try and think about what you really, what you know would probably have to send you over the edge mentally. And if you're feeling another thing is intuition. If you're feeling extremely anxious during a situation, it's time to go. Like,
yes.
So if you can just be like, oh, excuse me, gotta go upstairs, go to the room. Like, for example, certain mannerisms, because I've been victimized before, so like certain mannerisms are very impactful. Sporadic movements for me, like a man taking sporadic movements, I don't like that. So that's triggering for me. So I know that I have to go, and even if it's a male that I love, but he's for some reason making sporadic movements, I'll just have to go. Like, I wouldn't say liar. You gotta do. Make sure, if you, without hurting the person's feelings, if that's something that bothers you, make sure you can exit out the situation. Really, what you gotta do to make sure you can exit. That's gonna be the most important thing, because especially if you are working or you have stuff to do with most people do. Panic attacks have an effect, like, for the rest of the week.
Yes.
So it's not really where I know you want to be there for that person, but you also have to be on time for work. So, so yeah, we just know your boundaries and your limitations, your parameters.
Yeah, that's it. I think knowing your limitations, knowing your boundaries, staying within your boundaries. It's like going to see a doctor. You know, if there are a bunch of patients in a room, okay, well, if your leg is broken and my leg is broken, how much can I really help you with your broken leg while mine is broken? We're in here for the same thing. We both need to be seen. Let the doctors do their thing. Let those who are healed and in a place who have that knowledge, who can help us, let them help us. And then when I get to that place, you know, when my broken bones are healed, and if I feel safe enough to go back and to help, then I will do that. I think it's just really knowing, first of all, you have to be safe and healed yourself before you attempt to go back to help someone else. Again, it is necessary. You know, we do need to help, you know, each other. But you got to be in a place where you can do that. So, Pastor May, please give us, you know, your thoughts on it, and say hello to Luv Bay as you're coming in now.
Oh, hello. I'm so sorry. I really lost track of time trying to do my wifely duties, cook dinner for my husband, and I lost total track of time. I'm so sorry. I'm glad I got a chance to see your message. Fill me in where you are so I can inhale and exhale.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you, you know, because we're talking about, you know, going back to help others, you know, when you're in a healed and a safe place to do so. And, you know, that's just not for everybody to do. You know, everyone who goes through a traumatic experience, it doesn't mean that you have to go and just start telling your story publicly. You know, you don't have to do that. But I know specifically the other day when we were talking, we talked about physician, heal thyself. So can you speak to that and maybe bring comfort to someone who may be anxious right now, you know, about feeling like they have to tell their story and they have to go, you know, and help someone else, but, you know, they really are just not, you know, where they need to be, or maybe just don't even want to.
Well, you know, first of all, if you're a doctor and you need surgery, you surely cannot operate on yourself.
Right.
You know, because you got to have anesthesia, first of all, so you're going to be knocked out. So you can't cut yourself, can't sew yourself up. You know, you can't administer anything to yourself when it comes to surgery. So, you know, there's no sense of if you're not able to do that, if you're a physician, you can't heal yourself. Don't try, because you end up, if you're half awake in surgery and trying to cut yourself, you're gonna hurt yourself. Okay, so definitely, if you're someone that has gone through a traumatic experience in a relationship, and people are trying to force you into telling your story, or suggesting that, oh, you know, you really need to share that. There's other people, because people will try to persuade you. You know, you need to tell your story. There's other people out there, you know, that need to hear your story. Well, there's plenty of other people who have been through what I've gone through, so they don't need to particularly hear my story. Right. Okay. So, you know, being able to tell a story, you have to have been healed from the inside, without. And a lot of people aren't healed on the inside. They look good, you know, they have it masked, and they work they're doing everything normal that would appear that they are well and healed, but in actuality, I think I heard someone talk about triggers, that, you know, triggers will come, and all of a sudden, you know, you're totally a different person. You're in a corner, you know, you're locked down. People are talking to you, you can't hear them. So why try to put yourself out there when you know that you're really not ready?
Right.
Okay. You can't heal yourself like that. you will need time. You will need therapy. You will need to put yourself in a position where people can help you, and you not try to help yourself. Sometimes people think, "Oh, I can do this. I'm over it. I can get through this by myself." And they're fooling themselves because
Right.
no man is an island. That cliche. No man is alone, or. So you always need someone to help you work through traumatic experiences, and you can't help yourself. You can't heal yourself.
Right.
You definitely, if you are someone that is spiritually led, you can know the word backwards and forward. You could have a strong prayer life, but sometimes that stuff will hit you, things will trigger, and you need the Bible and a psychiatrist.
Yes.
Or you need the word, prayer, and a therapist.
Yes.
Okay? You need all of those collectively. Don't let anybody fool you to think that you are able to just do that alone. Prayer is essential. Knowing scriptures is essential. But, people are now learning. They're not afraid to go to therapists anymore. Luke was a doctor. That scripture that I was talking about was talking about Luke himself. So he was a doctor. So, Jesus had a doctor on his team. Come on here. He had a doctor on his team. He had a medical staff. Okay. So therefore, if Jesus had a medical staff, then we need one too.
Right.
So don't try to do it yourself. Get the help that you need. Even sometimes your closest friends, you may try to, even confide in them. But if they're not, sometimes if they're not able to really empathize, sympathize with you, and they're not professionally able to work things out with you, they just I hear you, I'm here for you, you got my ear, but let's see if we can find you some professional help. Somebody that has studied the mind, has studied how to counsel people when they're in those traumatic experiences. So yes, can't heal yourself. If Jesus needed a doctor, you do too.
Yes. Luv Bay, we want to welcome you again to Suffering in Silence with Tia May on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, with a replay on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay, we're rising out of the ashes together. So as we continue in the topic, I just remembered just a quick example. I remember because of what I do, because of who I am, people will specifically seek me out to speak about their domestic violence issues, or to get information, or maybe they want help for a loved one. And I remember after one particular service that I was in at church, a woman sought me out. Apparently she had been trying to get in contact with me for a little bit. Like, people were giving me messages. When I finally had the chance to meet with her, the first thing she said was, this is my story, this is what I've been through, and I'm ready to just start telling my story, and I want to start a ministry. And I was standing there looking at her, and she was just visibly shaking the whole time, just like even just trying to have just a normal conversation. She was shaking, her voice was cracking, and you could just see the stress and the anxiousness, coming off of her, and I could just see it, and just had to point out, you're not ready. It's beautiful that you want to, but you're not ready. What you need to do right now is see a counselor for yourself. What you need to do right now is take care of yourself. You can't go help the world, or even your next door neighbor, if you can't do anything on your own. And, and I had just had to emphasize again, there is not a mandate. Just because you have experienced something traumatic, it does not mean that you are the one that has to go out and start advocating. It's beautiful that you want to. It's beautiful that you have the thought. But the most important thing is taking care of yourself. It really is. Carrie, when we were talking before, you previously touched on the mandate, the biblical mandate, and from the Quran, to care for the sick and the widow and the orphan. Do you wanna speak on it, on that aspect?
Yeah. So I asked in a previous conversation that I was having with the ladies, I asked them, especially like three of them being really well versed in the holy text of the Bible. It was like, what if the person is an orphan, a sick person, a widow, they're homeless? Because in the Quran and in the Bible, it talks about how you basically have to help those people. And as I mentioned before, I think that if it's within your realm of being able to do it, that it's good. If you don't want to, like, for example, if you are really very extremely stressed at your job, like your job is very, very taxing, and you take Sundays maybe for yourself, and like Sundays are kind of how you survive. Volunteering to serve breakfast and lunch at a homeless shelter may not be the best option for you, because you don't want to spend too much of your inner resources, even though you can find other ways to help that are more aligned with your spiritual walk and your healing process. Another example, if you are, maybe there's an orphan and maybe the mom or the dad abandoned and now the mom's passed or something. If you can help this person, and it's religiously advised that you do. However, if there's a type of conversation that's happening and you really can't go there because it's reminding you of something from your past, maybe don't touch on that. I think you have to you can pray, and you can read the Bible or the Quran or meditate, whatever it is you do, to try to figure out, okay, how can I help without completely sacrificing myself? And I know it's specifically in Christianity. Christianity does teach about altruism, which is basically about selflessness. However, we can't be selfless all the time. And it does talk about putting others before yourself. But in order to have a self, you have to be able to nurture yourself and feed into your own spirit. So, you don't want to get lost, because when your identity gets lost, which is what I mean by the self, and this can happen to a lot of moms, even wives, so invested in their husband. And, there's tons of narratives on that. I've read them because I write on women's identity, catering so much to the husband's wants, his needs, his dreams. Turn around, you're 48, and you're like, dang, what about me? I could have had those things. And so, yes, you're supposed to, as spouses, you're supposed to serve each other, and, you want to support, you're supposed to, Christianity, it's perspectives, but it talks about, how the man is the head of the house, and so you have to support that, but at the same time, you are a woman, well, there's men listening too, but, you are a woman, and you deserve to do things that make you feel feminine and that make you feel good, and you deserve to help yourself as well. So I think another thing with people who are always helping, they like helping because it gives them a sense of purpose, and they don't feel worthy unless they're of use to someone else. So you have to also watch that. So basically, in summary, I would just say, yes, help those groups of people that are mandated in the Bible and also the Quran, but do it in ways that are healthy for you. And if you feel like it's a risk and you really feel called to do it, God will keep you. If you really have to, like, for example, Tia was like, that was not my plan, and she's walked back and walked she's gone back and walked out of her journey again. Like when she was writing that book, she had to relive a lot of experiences, and human perspective, relying on your own understanding, you're like, what? I am not doing that. And her former marriage, I mean, it was a long time ago, but at the same time, it wasn't. So it's still like, but she did that because she felt called to it. So if you are going to do things that might be risky for you trauma-wise, and when it comes to helping someone, make sure you feel called to do it. Like you feel convicted, and and even if you're not a spiritual person or someone who understands what it means to be, or has never experienced being called by God to do something, and maybe you're unsure if that's possible, even if you're someone like that, I mean, humans can feel like adrenaline starts rushing and be like, I need to do this. This is something I need to do. Mm-hmm. You know, everyone knows what that feels like, but meditate within yourself, be sure, and have a plan. Like I said, you need to be able to have an exit plan and pace yourself. So those are my points.
Right.
Can I just kind of, the one key word that I heard you say was definitely called. Mm-hmm. You have to be called to being able to talk about your abusive experience. You got to be called to do that. Everybody's not called. Everybody has a calling, and even though you have experienced and have come out of it, you may not be called to tell it. Mm-hmm. You know, you may be called to tell someone like you who could put pen to paper and write it for them. You know, they could, tell you and then allow you to write their story and let somebody else read it, and publish a book. But they may not be the one to actually tell the story personally. But they may be called to tell someone like you who's able to put everything down that they've said, to arrange it and put it in book form so that someone else can read it and understand what they're going through and say, oh, I experienced just what was in that book. But they may not be able to tell it, So, the call that you talk about is definitely important. You got to be called to be able to do that and be able to tell your story with boldness and conviction, and at the end to say that I'm an overcomer from it.
Yes.
So being able to be an overcomer from it is very important, but you got to be called to it, as you have already said. Got to be called, because it'll eat you up. It can eat you up. It can eat you up.
Tia, I wanted to say also, when it comes to talking about helping people, and how I know within the Bible, it kind of talks to a lot of women, especially, and they talk about how I don't want to say the Bible because I don't know specific verses. I once did, but that's a long story.
I'll help you out if you need.
Talking about like wives feeling, obligated in a religious sense to lie with their husbands, like in that way, like be intimate, and they feel mandated. Like if your husband is not doing well, or his manhood is wounded, or something's going on with him, and you feel as a wife mandated to help him, and your first immediate thing is like, oh, my body, because that's something that can reinforce his manhood and help him and make him feel better. So helping him in that way, there's nothing wrong with giving your man some love to make him feel better. I'm just saying, I don't think you should feel, if you're not feeling it, I don't feel like you should feel obligated just because he's sad, or you feel like you need to help him. You need to help his man, like masculinity. I don't think you should have to help him in that way if you don't want to. I just want to also say that.
Well, that's when we go.
Well, I'm about ready to jump in. Right?
Well, that's where we can get into the issue of, you're talking about sacrificing yourself. There's the issue of the word of God being taken and distorted, and people using it, for personal gain. So, I mean, there is a lot in that. But I think the point is, you do not sacrifice yourself for another person for a situation. It's one thing to help. And it's one thing to help when you are ready to help and when you are able to help. But you don't destroy yourself or hurt yourself or take away from yourself at the expense, for someone else. You don't do that. That's not biblical, and that's not helping. And when you're talking about inside of a marriage and you want to build your spouse up, if you're talking about trying to build them up physically, build them up sexually, mentally, emotionally, that's one thing, because that's loving. That's what you do for your spouse. That's completely different when you manipulate that situation and a person feels forced to do those things. Two totally different things. That's what one has nothing to do with the other, and that's where we need to call on like Pastor May and some others who like know how to rightly divide the word of truth, when we're dealing with that. But I think, just back to the original point, you cannot help someone in anything until you are helped and healed yourself. You have to be okay yourself. I want to take a minute to share a couple more resources, and then Jen, I want to ask you a question. We have Butler County Citizens Against Domestic Violence. Their number is 513-423-0044. We also have Clark County Project Woman. The number is 800-643-9893. And then we have Greene County Family Violence Prevention Center in Greene County. The number is 937-372-4552. So, Jen, I want to ask you, can you please talk about the healing process? I love the way how you explain that healing is not continual. It just does not go in a straight line. I just love the way that you just explain that. Can you talk about the healing process?
Sure. Thank you. So I think it's important, when we're talking about you can't help somebody until you're healed, to note that healing is not a linear process. You have to heal over and over again, continually. Trauma is a very deep-rooted, ugly thing, and it doesn't go away easily. Like that book I recommended earlier, Your Body Keeps the Score. Your body remembers what you've been through. And so, as you're healing, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with your process, because it is going to take it's a experience, it's a journey that happens over and over again. And so in that, when you talk about helping other people, just a couple things, kind of what Pastor May alluded to already, you don't have to have a platform to be an advocate, and I think that specifically we need to acknowledge that that's mostly what we're talking about. You don't have to be somebody that gets up on a stage and tells your story to be effective in helping to stop an issue or in helping to make sure that this is something that doesn't happen to other people. You, as Carrie was kind of saying as well, when you experience something, you have a known empathy for it that maybe somebody else doesn't have, because you understand what that process was, what that trauma was. And so you can empathize and reach people on a whole other level. And so I think it's important to note that when you talk about helping other people, it's very important that you're ready, that you are in a safe place with yourself. You are able to handle things, and only you will know what that looks like. But you don't have to have a platform. You don't have to have a stage. Being the person that is willing to listen is sometimes the most powerful thing you could ever do for somebody. And having an empathy that not everybody else has access to, that is a superpower. And so I just think, especially, I mean, I think this is a very general thing across the board, but especially in Christian community, there's this idea that there has to be a purpose in your pain, specifically out of your pain. And I just want to call that out as a lie. God does not enjoy our pain. God does not lead us into this pain so that we will be these soldiers or warriors. You know, God allows things to happen, but he absolutely hates the injustice that people experience. And so I just want to call that lie out and say that in that note, you do not owe anybody anything out of your pain.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
So, and Jen, as you were saying, help looks different. It does. It's not going to be everyone writes a book or everyone is on a stage or a platform. Help might be me sitting in my room, taking care of me, watching this TV show and eating this bowl of ice cream, making sure that I'm okay. That's what help could look like. Help may be, I speak with my neighbor, and comfort her or him, and help them through a situation. It doesn't always mean I'm going to stand in front of 3,000 people, and I'm advocating by myself, trying to get laws changed. Help looks different. And whatever it is, you have to make sure that you are okay before you step out to do anything. There are some things that I won't do. There are some situations and atmospheres that I will not step into. There are some speaking engagements that I will not take because I'm not ready for it or, because I can't handle it. There are some topics, that we've talked about as a team. We've reviewed as a team that I couldn't do. I couldn't handle it. And so me trying to force myself to take on an issue or an atmosphere that I'm not ready for, and that I may never be ready for, that's not helpful to anyone. That's not going to help the people that I'm trying to reach. I know my responsibility. I know my purpose and my calling, but I also know my limitations. And we don't want to discourage anyone, but we just really want to emphasize you have to take care of yourself and move at your own pace. It's okay to say no. It's okay not to do what everyone else is doing. If someone comes up with a great idea, and invites you to speak or invites you to share, it's okay to say no. There are a lot of support groups who've invited me to come, not to speak, but to participate. And some of those invitations I've had to say no, because every support group is not a safe group for me to be in. And you need to recognize that.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point in knowing where you're safe, knowing what is safe for you. And that looks different for everyone.
Right.
But to your point, Tia, I want to just kind of reiterate that and say this isn't all or nothing. You get to decide. And guess what? If you tell your story and you think you're ready and you told it and now you feel super uncomfortable, you don't ever have to do it again.
Right.
You get to decide. Yeah. You have the power over your own story, and you get to draw your boundary lines, and you get to redraw them when your boundaries change. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say, you can be one and done.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
One and done. You thought you could do it. You do it that first time and say, oh, no, I can't do it. I'm done. And may never go back to do it again. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
To not to ever go back to do it again. It's all right. If it's putting you in an uncomfortable place, it's okay. As Tia said, it's okay to say no. Yeah. Learn how to say no.
Yes.
You have some people that have, as Carrie had talked about, some people feel like they, I think she had alluded to it earlier about people feel like they're obligated to say yes because somebody happened to ask them to do it and they may know a little bit about their story. And you don't have to be obligated because you've been through something and somebody else wants to hear how you made it out. Okay? Yeah. You don't have to feel obligated to do that, and don't put yourself in a situation that's going to cause you to feel bad about it, relive it. You have other times to relive it or think about it. I saw your hand go up, Carrie.
It's like, yes.
We all get so pumped up.
Also, I want to talk about feeling weak in the capacity of being feminine. It's like being a woman. A lot of people don't think about women feeling weak. They always think about men feeling emasculated and men feeling like, dang, I was weak. No, women feel like that too. And I say that to say, you don't have to, first of all, domestic violence, if you go through that does not mean that you are weak. Okay? That means that person, that man was weak. Okay? That does not mean you were weak. Also, you don't have to seek redemption and telling your story and violating your own boundaries and reliving your trauma in order to redeem that perceived weakness.
Right.
Like, you don't have to, dang, I really didn't say nothing to him when he called me that name. Dang, I really let that man put his hands on me, etc. I feel so weak, so let me go and do this.
Right.
And to redeem that. Women go through feeling weak, and that's something that people don't even think about, and that's why I love talking about women's identity, and that's what I mean by that, because I know some people are like, what is she talking about, women's identity? So, like, that's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, don't feel like you have to go and tell your story or make yourself uncomfortable or relive trauma in order to redeem that that perceived weakness from the past. And I say perceived because you're thinking it's weak, but you weren't weak.
Yeah. You're the narrator of your story, always. And so you get to decide who hears what when. And I think it's important that, like, you don't owe anybody your pain. You don't owe anybody your traumatic experience. That is, you hold the power there. And I think, what you're saying, Carrie, in terms of identity too, that's a really important thing to remember, because we lose so much power when we go through trauma. And so to know that you have the power, you get to decide what happens next. It can be kind of an overwhelming and scary thing when you're not used to having that power.
Yeah.
But it's an important thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was just going to say one last thing, because I wanted to just make sure people understand that, because a lot of times when people think of battered women, people think of women that are like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad and I feel, so hurt that I was abused. No, women go through anger, feeling weak. Like, we feel those things that people think are reserved for masculinity, and it's not.
So, ladies, thank you just so much for everything that you shared. Pastor May, I'm going to ask that you would give us some final thoughts on the topic as we close tonight. But Luv Bay, I wanted to share again the unfortunate information that the remains of Cheryl Tia Long Soldier have been found. Efforts are still underway to hopefully find out and discover what happened to Cheryl since the time that she was reported missing and now having been found murdered. Cheryl has 3 children, ages 12, 9, and 5, that are now being cared for by her grandmother, Miss Victoria. If you would like to help the family financially to assist with their needs, you can go to PayPal and make a donation to the email address for Mary Weasel Bear. Mary's email address is maryweaselbear@gmail.com. bear@gmail.com. And we will continue to keep Miss Victoria and Tia's children in prayer. But Pastor May, we want you to take the final words to close our topic on tonight, helping others when you are safe and healed.
Know that your story is your story, and you don't have to tell anybody your story unless you want to or called to. Mm-hmm. And even if you should decide to tell it, tell as much as you want and tell as less as you want. Mm. Okay? And if you decide that you want someone to know it, but you're not able to tell it yourself, then find someone that can help you tell your story so that you don't have to be pressured, don't have to answer unwanted questions when you're put in front of an audience, because a lot of times people aren't satisfied with the details that you give them. They want more. Mm-hmm. They want more detail. They want you to tell them more. It's like they want all the intricate parts of what happened, mm-hmm. why you didn't leave, how come you stayed too long, and you're not ready all the time to answer those questions, because most of the time you can't tell them why. You don't know why sometimes. Mm-hmm. Why you've stayed in it so long. Sometimes it could be children, and if there's no children, you may not always understand why you stayed in it, and then you may thought it was going to get better, and it didn't. So people want to ask all of those type of questions, and a lot of times you're not ready to answer those mm-hmm. questions. You think that you are. You're not obligated to tell anybody. So just use wisdom and be wise about whether you want to take it to a platform level. Doesn't have to be a platform. You can help one person and sit in a kitchen with a cup of tea and a piece of pound cake. Yes. And sit down and talk between the two of you and with nobody else in the room and say, baby, listen, 40 years ago, I went through the same thing that you went through. Can I share my story? And it's between you and that other person with a piece of my pound cake, okay? A piece of my pound cake and a cup of tea, and share your story. And that's the only audience that you may ever need. You may be a one-on-one person to share, and you'd be surprised of how much you can just help that one. You may only call to one person to help. Yes. Mm-hmm. So know that as well. Mm-hmm. So I guess I could stop there because it's almost time to get off.
Yes, it is.
I'm mad because I missed 15 minutes of it.
Luv Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes from the program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence DV. We thank you for joining Suffering in Silence with Tia May. We're here on Luv Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Luv Bay, we're rising out of the ashes together. Thank you again to my co-hosts, Pastor May Davis of Greater Works Christian Ministries, Jennifer Peterkin, and Carrie Hardy. Good evening.